Welcome to A Change of Heart podcast. I'm your host, Angel Walston. And in this space, we navigate life together. We ask the hard questions like, what is the truth you haven't told? But most importantly, we grow together. And sometimes that leads to a change of heart.
Hey everyone, welcome back to A Change of Heart podcast. I am your host, Angel, and if this is your first time tuning in, hey girl, come on and get acquainted. Welcome to the potty. And if you're a returning listener, you already know what it is. Welcome back to the family. So today we're going to be talking about fear. And listen, y'all, this one is personal. This one we're going to get a little vulnerable. I don't believe it's going to be emotional, but there's going to be a little vulnerable, okay? So before we jump into that, instead of doing a question of the day, I decided I wanted to do a little would you rather game. And we're going to keep it light because we're going to get a little deep, okay? We're going to get a little deep in this conversation about fear. So the first question is, would you rather be trapped in a romantic comedy with your enemies or in a horror movie with your best friends? So this is my thought process with this. I'm going to say the romantic comedy with my enemies, mainly because I don't like horror movies. And I feel like typically in a horror movie, somebody dies. I want my friends to die. And worst case scenario in the romantic comedy, like there's some humor there. So you can laugh even though you might be around somebody you really don't want to deal with. Number 2, would you rather go through life unable to forget anything ever or go through life unable to remember anything? I feel like I don't remember stuff now. So I feel like that's kind of like my current life. I would rather go through life and not forget anything ever, even though there are probably like bad memories that you would like to forget, but I wouldn't want to not be able to ever remember like the good memories or only be able to remember them through pictures. Number 3, would you rather always hit a red light for the rest of your life or always get slow internet after the sun goes down? I would be cool with having slow internet after the sun goes down because I'm trying to cut down on my being on my phone as is. And so I feel like that would be like a good way to be like, okay, time to put your phone down because the internet's going to be slow anyways. And just the thought of being stopped at every single light, that's mad annoying. Like I don't want that for my life. Number 4, would you rather spend the next 20 years as a student or the next 20 years as an employee? That's an easy one. I don't want to go back to school. Like the Lord God himself will have to like audibly speak to me and tell me I need to go back to school for me to become a student again because I ain't got it in me, y'all. I don't write no papers. I don't read no books. Like, no, thank you. All right, last one. Would you rather be forced to listen to the same 10 songs on repeat for the rest of your life or forced to watch the same 5 movies on repeat for the rest of your life? So I'm a creature of habit, so either or could work for me, but I will say I do tend to get sick of songs quicker than I do something that I've watched. So there are movies that I love that I can watch multiple times. The Office, I pretty much watch that series like every year. So I feel like I could watch the same 5 movies and probably be okay. But the same 10 songs, like eventually I'm going to be like, all right, can we get something else? All right, so that is our question of the day, which is our Would You Rather game. You know the drill. If you're listening to this on my YouTube channel or watching this on my YouTube channel, then you can put your answers in the comment section below, or you can answer it on Instagram through my stories at Angel C. Walston. All right, y'all. So we are talking about addressing fear and coming face to face with fear. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, like I'm high-key anxious to do this episode and what we're going to talk about because in 2022, I feel like a lot of things that I didn't do or did do, if that makes sense, was rooted in fear. And I feel like a lot of times fear is a huge component as to why we don't do things, why we don't try things, why we stay stuck, why we become stagnant, why we find ourselves going through the same types of cycles, even though that's not where we want to be. And a lot of times we say that we feel stuck, but the thought of stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing something that you've never done before, like the fear of that can be paralyzing at times. And I feel like for a lot of you, including myself, we have allowed fear to keep us in spaces that we've outgrown. Can we talk about that, or are we too early into the podcast to go in? I'm gonna step back a little bit, but that's the truth of the matter is, and when you actually start to think about what your fear is rooted in, the fear I feel like is the symptom. It's what you can like tangibly feel, see, whatever it might be. But typically fear itself is not what is the root of whatever it is that is causing the fear. Like there's always something that is underlying, there's always something that it's rooted in, there's always something that is attached to that fear that is prompting that. And what we're going to talk about today, I'm not focusing on fear in the sense of it being like you are afraid of spiders or like you're afraid of snakes or something like that. I want to talk about how fear has impacted us in a way that it has kept us from growing, it has kept us from healing, it has kept us from being open to certain things. And I'm going to share something personal about how I am navigating through still fear and some lessons that I've learned as I've been in this space of coming face to face with my fears. So, like I said, I feel like I low-key feel afraid as I'm doing this episode, which is crazy. But I think that there is something that this is for someone. And so I want to be transparent and sharing. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So y'all know I'm a definition girl. I like to look up what the definition is of things because we just say things a lot of times and you don't really take the time to think about like, okay, what does this actually mean? So I looked up the definition of fear, and it is a distressing emotion aroused by impending danger, evil, pain, etc., whether the threat is real or imagined. Hold on to that right there. Whether the threat is real or imagined. So one of the things that I am constantly reminding myself of when I feel like that feeling of fear coming up is to ask myself the question, what is the perceived threat and what is actually happening? Like what is actually in front of me? So I'm an overthinker. I'm an anxious person. I do have anxiety. And as a result of that, my mind is always thinking. It's always going. It's always on to the next. And I feel like I'm the type of person I'm very anxious, but I give the perception at least of being very calm, cool, and collected. I feel like I've mastered that, not to say that that's a good thing. And so people don't realize like how my mind is literally always just like on go mode because I have a habit of thinking about all these scenarios that could happen, that are not yet before me, that have not yet happened, that may never happen, but it's like, but it could, you know? And a lot of times we get into our minds and we start creating these 50 million scenarios for what could happen. But not only this, y'all, or maybe this is just me, maybe I'm just telling on myself here, but we can also start creating these scenarios and also actively respond to these scenarios that don't exist, that have not yet occurred. And so we put ourselves in a position where we become anxious, where we become worried, where we start being fearful of all of the what ifs. Well, what if this happens? And I'm going to respond like this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And you really do get to a point where you become overwhelmed with all of these things that you are responding to when it's really a perceived threat, but it's not actually what is before you. And so something that I have been actively working on last year and into this year as well is respond to what's before you, because there's always going to be the what if. There's always going to be the scenario of, well, this could happen and it might turn out like this. People might say this. People might look at me like this, or I might not have the funds for it, or I might not like, there will always be what ifs. But here's something you have to take into consideration. When you think about the what ifs, our minds tend to always go to what if it doesn't work out, or what if it happens in a negative way. We rarely think about things like, well, what if it's actually like really great? And what if it works out in the way that we hope that it would? What if it's positive? We automatically go to worst case scenario. And with that, the worst case scenario, we tend to make it worse than what the actual realistically worst case scenario would be. And then you are over here having a whole meltdown, falling apart about the worst case scenario that's not even before you. So when you find yourself feeling anxious, when you find yourself battling fear around certain things, ask yourself, what is actually before me? What is the thing that I have in front of me right now? Let me focus on that. Let me look at that, because all of these other scenarios, yes, they could happen. Yes, it might happen. But it's not the impending threat right now. It's not the impending pain. It's not the impending danger. Like, as of right now, most of the time, there's no real threat, right? We have all of these things that we may be considering, or we may feel concerned or anxious or worried, but the thing that we're actually afraid of most of the time is not what's actually before us. And that's something that I'm having to come to terms with, because I tend to focus on what could be and not what is. And so I just want to encourage you, for those of you who may be in a space where you are feeling fearful about stepping out, you're feeling fearful about how things are going to come together, how things are going to work. You're feeling fearful about being open to change. I'm going to leave that right there. You're feeling fearful about being outside of your comfort zone. You're feeling fearful about allowing yourself to go through a healing journey. Just take a moment to consider, what is that fear really rooted in? Is it really about you being afraid of what is in front of you, what it is that you have to focus on right now, what it is that you have to deal with right now? Or is the fear associated to what's on the other side of it, what's on the end of it? Because here's the thing, we don't know what our process is going to look like, right? We don't know where this journey is going to take us. We don't know when we say yes to something, when we step out, when we try something new, when we take the time to really like deal with ourselves, when we are putting ourselves in a position to do something that we haven't done before, i.e. change something or to do something differently. A lot of times your mind is going to give you pushback because it's different. It's not something that you've done before. It's something that's unfamiliar. And so it's easier to be reluctant or resistant to that because it's not something that you've done. It's not something that you've experienced before. So the fear of the unknown alone can keep you in a space to stay where you are versus stepping out to where you know you are called to go. And a lot of times when we are in that space, we are wrestling because of the fear of the unknown. But the thing about a journey is, as you go along, you learn along the way. As you put one foot in front of the other, as you take the steps, God equips you with people. He equips you with resources to help you along the journey. And sometimes we lose sight of that, or we don't consider that, because that's not a part of one of the scenarios of how this is going to fail, or how this is not going to go the way that we planned for it to. And we put ourselves in position that we over prepare and overcorrect in a way that it's like, what is you doing? Like, you don't have to do all of that. So I just want to encourage you that as you are finding yourself dealing with fear, as you are finding yourself feeling anxious or worried about certain things, to one, think about, like, what is this actually rooted in? And then also just take a moment to consider, what is it that is before me versus the things that I'm planning for, the things that I'm preparing to go wrong that aren't really an issue right now. Let me focus on what is before me. Let me focus on what I can see, what I have the answers for right now, and I'll take everything one step at a time as it's coming. And y'all, I know that's so much easier said than done, because listen, I'm telling myself this too. This is a us thing, okay? This is not just a me telling you, this is an us thing. So the next thing I want to talk about in regards to coming face to face with fear is being okay with making a mistake and being okay with messing up. And that's hard for me to say because, listen, this is something that I'm still working through and processing through. But I shared in, I believe, the first episode that there was a little mini clip that I wanted to share in a different episode in regards to taking the joy out of the journey. And it's by Pastor Brittany Morton. And I want to insert the clip here, and then we're going to talk about this thing, okay?
He said, many times my sons and daughters are so consumed in trying to get things right that you've completely taken the joy out of the journey. this year, I want you not to be afraid to make a mistake. I want you not to be afraid to try something and be an amateur at something and perfect it. You will stop growing if all you seek to do is master and perfect everything, and you're not afraid to start again and do something new and learn and grow and ask questions. The Father wanted me to remind us tonight, Belong Church, that there is supposed to be a journey of discovery and exploration that He wants us on. He doesn't want us so consumed with, oh man, I got to do this right and I got to check this off the box, that you take the fun out of it, you take the joy out of it, you take the discovery out of it. There is so much that God wants to show us.
So y'all okay? Y'all ready to talk about this? Because when I heard that, I was like, ooh, ma'am, that is loud. Like, I feel like that was specifically for me because I had found myself being in a position where I was so consumed with trying to get it right, trying to do everything right, trying to make sure I didn't mess it up, trying to make sure that I didn't make a mistake. And I found myself almost resentful of the journey because it was like, I feel like I can't be right enough, but I'm always trying to get it right. And if I make a mistake, then it's just like, that is exhausting. This is in no means saying just live a reckless life and just be out here like, oh, we're just going to be doing whatever. No. Like, we still have discernment. We still have wisdom for sure. But we have to be in a position where we're able and willing to take a risk, even though that risk may lead to us making a mistake, even though that risk may not work in the way that we thought it would. When I first listened to this clip, I shared it with one of my best friends, and I was telling her that a big part of me not wanting to make a mistake and wanting to get everything right is because there's a part of me that like doesn't want to repeat things that I've seen throughout my family, things that I've seen with friends, loved ones, whatever it might be. It's like I don't want to repeat those same mistakes. And so as a result of that, it's like I'm always trying to get it right. I'm always trying to do the right thing. And it made me think about this analogy of when you are learning how to drive, or just in general when you're driving. A lot of times when people are driving and they get into a car accident, they'll say that sometimes it's a result of the person overcorrecting. So say like a deer or something jumps out in front of you, and instead of just hitting the deer head on, which is encouraged, you overcorrect to try not to avoid hitting them. And then as a result of that, you end up doing more damage than if you would have just hit that thing head on. Are y'all seeing where I'm going with this? Just in case you're not, we're going to break that thing down real quick. So for a lot of you, you're in a position where you are trying so hard to avoid the crash. You're trying so hard to avoid failure. You're trying so hard to avoid pain. You're trying so hard to avoid this thing that you don't want to happen, that you are overcorrecting and you're trying your best to avoid it, and not realizing that if you were to just keep on the straight path, if you were to just go at it head on, even if you hit it, it still would do less damage than you over here trying to take matters into your own hands. We talked about that last week. And you trying to put yourself in a position where it's like, I'm trying so hard not to do it the way that they did it, that you don't even realize that you're putting yourself in a position where it's like you've went too far to the other side of the spectrum, and you're not allowing yourself to enjoy the journey. You're not allowing yourself the ability to live, and you're not allowing yourself the opportunity to live a full life because you're so worried about getting it right. You're so worried about not messing up. You're so worried that if you make one mistake that everything else just falls apart. And in that, you really do lose the joy in the journey. And something that I'm constantly having to remind myself of in this season and last year is that I said this in the last episode, I will say it again today. I truly believe that when your heart is in the right place, I truly believe that God is not going to allow you to go so far off course that there's no correcting it. God is not going to allow you to go so far off the path that it's just going to lead you to a path that you can't get out of. I genuinely believe that He will eventually get us back onto the course that we need to be on, even if we make a mistake, even if we don't get it right every single time. And for a lot of you, myself included, we don't take a risk. We don't step out. We don't try something new because we're so afraid of messing up. We're so afraid of not getting it right. We're so afraid that if I don't do this right, it's going to be so catastrophic. And maybe not catastrophic, but there's this feeling of failure just being the end all be all. And that's just not the case. And so I want to encourage you that as you are going through this journey, put the joy back in the journey and do that however that may look for you. So for me, trying to put the joy back in the journey is I'm committing to doing something new once a month that I've never done before, that I've never tried before, that I may or may not be good at, and being okay with failing. And that in itself, child, I don't want to do that. But for me, this is something, a step that I'm taking to address my fear of failing, my fear of not always getting it right, my fear of wanting to be the one that does everything right all the time, like letting that go. Because here's what you got to understand. To carry the weight of always getting everything right, you have to understand that when you get everything right, yes, it's great. It's like, yes, I did that. Woo woo. But when it's not right, when you don't get it right, you also have to deal with the weight of failing. And that's too heavy of a burden to carry. That is too much weight to place on yourself. And you can put yourself in a situation where you feel like you are a failure because you failed, even though those things are not equivalent all the time. And so as I am trying to address fears, as I am trying to overcome fears, I'm having to come face to face with the fact that I haven't taken a lot of risk. I haven't stepped out in a lot of ways because of this fear that is associated with, I don't want to mess up, or it has to be right. And sometimes it won't be right. And that's okay. Life will still go on. You will be okay. Sometimes you will miss the mark, and that is okay. And we have to be okay with accepting that you won't always do it right every single time, but just keep trying. Keep putting your best foot forward and keep putting yourself in a position where you have a heart and you have the desire to do it right. You have the heart and the desire to get it right. But knowing that even if you don't, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you can't try it again. It doesn't mean that you can't do it again. It's positioning yourself to take a risk and putting the joy back in the journey and allowing yourself to be forgiven when you make a mistake, to be okay and knowing that if you mess up, you're not written off. You're not forgotten about. You're not going to be ignored. You're not going to be hated. It's going to be okay. And I know for a lot of people, there is that fear that is associated with, but if this doesn't turn out like this, or if this does not happen, put the joy back into the journey. And sometimes putting the joy back in the journey simply looks like pivoting. You tried something, it didn't work out, you pivot. You tried something, it didn't go as planned, you pivot. You went out and did something, didn't go as planned, you pivot. We can take the joy out of the journey when we try something, it didn't work out, I gave up. You don't have to quit. You just got to learn how to pivot. And I think if the pandemic has taught us nothing else, it taught us how to pivot. Things aren't always going to go as planned. You can have all of these ideas. You can have all of these thoughts. It can be real cute. You can buy you a cute little planner. You can journal. You can manifest. You can do your vision boards. You can do all those things. But life will life. Like things will happen and you will not always have control over that. And so be okay with putting yourself in a position to say, I'm going to try this. And even if it doesn't go as planned, I'm okay with pivoting. I'll be flexible to allow God to move me in whatever way I need to, because even though I have a plan for how this is going to look, God can do things in the unexpected, and God can do things in what was deemed as failure. And so we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we quit because it didn't go as planned, or we give up because this wasn't the path that I was supposed to take to get here. We get so consumed by what it's supposed to look like that we don't even realize that the mishaps is what it's supposed to look like sometimes. The mishap was the path that I needed to go on to get some additional lessons to get me to where I'm going to be. Sometimes you have to go through mishaps to get you not to the place that you want to be or the place that you're trying to be next. Sometimes the lessons that you get in the mishaps, the lessons that you get in the middle of one process, you may not use that for the next step, but you very well could use those lessons 5, 10 years from now. And so we can be very focused on the right now and not really understand how God can use a season to prepare you and to equip you for something that you'll need 10 seasons from now. It's not always about what you can see before you. Sometimes it's about something that is greater than what you even know or what you're thinking about. So with that, put the joy back in the journey. Don't be so meticulous about, I got to do this, I got to do that, girl, chill out, calm down, sit that thing down for a minute, okay? Sometimes you need to sit back, you need to regroup, you need to get out of your head, you need to get out of your way. Stop allowing the fear of messing up, stop allowing the fear of not getting it right, stop allowing the fear of failure to keep you in a place where you have completely taken the joy out of the journey, that you're just rushing trying to get to the end of it, and you don't take all of those moments that are truly moments that is a part of the journey for a reason. Put the joy back into the journey. So last thing I want to talk about, and we're going to get a little personal, going to get a little deeper here, is to not allow the fear of disappointment to keep you from believing. Okay? Let's talk about it, y'all. We're going to take a little deep dive. Do not allow the fear of disappointment, meaning the fear of being disappointed, to keep you from believing. So for a lot of you, some of the things that you have been believing for, some of the things you've been wanting, some of the things that you could have done, should have done, all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, you have not yet spoken out loud, shared with someone, wrote it down or anything because of the fear of disappointment. And I can speak to that because I have found myself wanting certain things, but not wanting to verbalize them, not wanting to write them down, because the thought of them not happening is like, I can accept that if I never was like, oh yeah, I want this or I want that. But to say it out loud and to acknowledge, I really want this thing. Like, this is something that is a desire of mine. This is something that is really on my heart. And to not have that thing happen, it's like I'd rather not acknowledge it than to speak it and be disappointed. And God really had to deal with me, and is still dealing with me on that particular topic, because one of the things that I came face to face with last year was having to realize that there was something that I wanted, but I had given up on. And I did not want to necessarily say like, I want this or I'm believing for this thing, because I didn't think that it would happen for me. And that is the fact that I want to be married and that I want to be a wife. And I really wrestled with that for a while, because there was a point in time where I definitely did feel like God had called me to he called me to be single, and I was going to be single for the rest of my life. And I was like, I'm cool with that. And I realized that I truly did have a desire to be married, but not just in that. I also knew that God has not called me what he's called me to do it alone. Like I felt that thing. I knew that thing, but there was still this part of me that was like, I don't feel like it's going to happen for me. And my reasoning behind that was because it's like, I've been in relationships. I have been in tons of situationships. And it was just this feeling of they always started out good, and it just never led to anything. And I just got to a point where I felt like, God, I don't think this is going to happen for me. And so I really just started focusing on let me be content being single because this is not going to happen for me, even though I had that desire in my heart. And something that God has had to really work on in me over this last year, especially being in a relationship, was that I had to be willing to be open to allow the good to come, and also open to allowing the hard things that could be associated with that. So in me dealing with this whole thing of not wanting to really admit and acknowledge that I wanted to be married, that I wanted to be a wife, it was that fear of I don't want to be disappointed if this doesn't happen because I don't feel like this is going to happen for me. And I realized that I was very closed off to the thought of being in love because of the fear of being hurt again. And I know that's a lot of women's stories. We've all had those situations. We've all had those relationships that we thought would go somewhere. We thought that would be our forever person, and it just didn't work out. And I think for me, when I met my current significance other, that man will tell you I gave him a time, okay? I still give him a hard time at times just for fun. But I gave him a hard time early on because I knew what it was like to have a guy pursue you starting off and everything seems like it's good, right? It's like there's effort, they're calling, they're texting, they're doing all of these things. So it's like I wasn't impressed by that initially because it's like y'all all do this, right? And we all have that feeling when you know that switch up happens. Ladies, we know what that switch up is. It's like they do everything up front and it's like right before they ghost you or right before they say it's not you, it's me. Like keep that. Like we all have been there and experienced the switch up. And I just remember having this huge guard up because it's like, I don't want to fall in love and get hurt. I don't want to put myself in a position where it's like, I am allowing someone in that it's like, I wasn't looking for it. This wasn't even supposed to be a thing. And this ends bad because I've been in situations before. And for me, I was allowing my past, my history, my own expectations of how I thought things would go to make me feel like I have to protect myself. And here's the thing, I am a very confident woman. I am someone who is secure in themselves for the most part. And there's nothing I hate more than the feeling of feeling insecure behind a man. I hate it. I hate it so much. And I've been in situations before where I felt insecure because it's like, why won't they choose me? Or why won't they commit? Why won't they this? Why won't they that? And I hated that feeling of not feeling confident in who I was because someone else wasn't choosing me, but specifically behind a man. Like that never set right with my spirit. And so I felt like just kind of going through that pattern and going through that cycle, it really was frustrating because although I felt sure in myself, the fact that I could feel small in a way that made me question like, why am I not good enough? Why don't you want to choose me? I hated that. I hated that so much. And I share all of this because something that I've had to come to terms with is that one, I needed to allow myself to be open to receive love while also being okay to be open with the potential of getting hurt, because that is a risk that you take when you open yourself up to a relationship. And I remember just being afraid to do that because on one hand, I'm like, I've been single. I know how to do single and I can be single. And it wasn't even some I don't need a man kind of thing. It was just more so of like, I've been single. I know how to be single. And with that, I got to a point where I'm like, I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to experience the kind of love that I want because I'm afraid of the consequences that come along with taking that risk. And the reality is, when you open yourself up to someone and when you give someone the opportunity to experience you, to love you, you also open yourself up to the possibility of them hurting you. But you could also have the opportunity to experience something that you really want and something that is truly a desire for you. And you miss out on that if you allow fear alone to keep you from pursuing or being pursued by the thing that you actually want. And so I share all of that because I had to accept that I'm afraid and I don't know what the outcome of this, this situation may be. I'm afraid, but I want to give myself an opportunity to love and to fully dive in with this person, knowing that they could potentially hurt me, just because I could potentially hurt him. We're people. People can hurt you. Because I came to the conclusion that I don't want to completely miss it because I'm trying to protect myself so much, and I end up hurting myself in the long run because I didn't get to experience love or the life that I ultimately wanted because I was so focused on, I don't want to get hurt. So because I don't want to get hurt, I'm just going to protect myself and keep myself from all hurt, harm, or danger. That also protects yourself and keeps people out who need to be let in. And so I'm sharing that because I know that there are other women who are in a space, and men too, but this podcast is for women, so I'm talking to my girls. I know that there are women who are in a space where it's like, you've had the bad relationships, you've had the people who have wasted your time, you've had the situationships that went nowhere. I want to encourage you to be open to receiving love. And this is not relationship advice, because receiving love is not solely just in a romantic way. Because for some of you, you haven't had the types of friendships that you could have or that you would actually really love to have because your heart is so guarded. Like, this is not just a relationship thing. I want to encourage you to release the guard on your heart with discernment and wisdom, for sure. Like, allow people to show you their character, allow people to show you who they are, let them see them for who they are, but allow yourself to be softened to receive the love that you not just want, but that you also deserve, because you are deserving of it. And there's a fullness that comes with being loved well. There's a fullness that comes with being connected to the right people. There's a fullness that comes with having people who show you that not everyone is the same. And I don't want you to miss out on that opportunity because you are trying to protect yourself so greatly in a way that someone who could potentially help to heal that within you and to show you that you are deserving of a love. And not just this, y'all, you're deserving of it, but what you want exists. I cannot stress that enough. What you want exists. And listen, within reason, because I know that we can have like some list of things and it'd be like, girl, this is crazy. What you want exists. You can have what you want. You don't have to settle for something that is lackluster. You don't have to settle for something that is not fulfilling. You don't have to settle for something that is less than what you deserve or what you're putting out. Like, we're not doing bare minimum in 2023, okay? The bare minimum is not, no. Above and beyond. That's the expectation. Exceedingly and abundantly. That is the expectation. And so I say all of that to say, I just know that fear can really play a huge role when it comes to relationships. And like I said, this is not solely linked to romantic relationships, but it can keep you from truly experiencing a love. It can keep you from truly experiencing a care. It can keep you from truly experiencing the fullness that comes with relationships that are solid. I am grateful for the women who I am connected to in this season. Like, I am truly grateful for the people who I'm able to have honest conversations with and be vulnerable. I've been talking to some women here lately about the things in this particular season that I am very scared about, that I am afraid of, and I'm grateful that they encourage me to know that this is an exciting season. Like, I know it's scary, but it's exciting. We're rooting for you. We're praying for you. Like, I'm genuinely grateful for that, because I don't want to do life alone. And that's something else that I've had to come to terms with, because as an introvert and someone who can isolate at times, and I've gotten better about that, but it's very easy to withdraw. And for those of you who are similar to me, who is introverted, you like your space, you like your bubble, I want to challenge you and encourage you to not withdraw in this season, but to push yourself to connect. To push yourself to connect with other people, because there truly is power in numbers, and it's powerful to be connected with the right people. I don't know what God is doing in your life in this season. I don't know what is next for you, but I truly believe that if you're listening to this, it's necessary for you to be connected with the right people in this season. It's not meant for you to go through this life alone. It's not meant for you to go into your next alone. You need people connected to you who are going to be praying for you, who are going to be encouraging you, who are going to help you to stay the course. You need people who are going to be accountable to you. You need people who are going to stretch you. You need people who are going to challenge you. You need people who are going to push you outside of your comfort zone. And I believe this because this ain't even notes. We just I just really felt led to share that for those of you who may be used to doing it alone, being by yourself. I don't need anybody kind of mentality. I understand how that may have been a sense of self-preservation at one point, but sometimes Sarah Jakes Roberts had a message. I can't remember what the name of it was. I'll link it in the description box. One of my friends shared it with me, but she was talking about how sometimes your model of self-preservation is keeping you in a space that is actually hindering you from where God is trying to take you to next, because you have become so guarded. You've put yourself in a position that has literally like guarded you. And God's like, I'm calling you out of that. And so I just want to remind you that you are going to be called out of some things in this season. And I don't want you to allow fear to try to keep you in an area that is familiar, or to keep you in a space that is safe, or keep you in a space that you know how to navigate already. Because when you are in a space where it's like, oh, I know how to do this, I'm familiar with this, I could do this in my sleep. You're operating in yourself. You're not operating in faith. You're not operating in God. You're operating in yourself. And God is trying to call you outside of yourself. So don't allow fear to keep you in a place that you have outgrown, because I truly believe that there are some things that God wants to do in this season. I truly believe that there are some things that, and this is not, I said this in the first episode, this is not a message about starting your business or doing this. There's an inner work. And for some of you, listen, that is the message for you. God is saying, I need you to start this business. I need you to accept this. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. But for some of us, it really is an inner work kind of thing. It is an inner healing. It is a journey to becoming who it is that we were always created to be. And so I want to truly just challenge you in this season to step outside of what you've known, to step outside of what is comfortable, to step outside of what has protected you. I know that's scary. Trust me, I know. But step outside of all of the measures that you have taken to keep yourself in your comfort zone, and that has kept you safe, not in a way that you are going out here unprotected per se, but that you're going out here stepping out in faith, and you're not allowing fear to run you. You're not allowing fear to keep you in a place that you continue on this same path that you are called to so much greater from. They're like, there's so much more that is inside of you, that is in store for you. And you can miss it because you're isolated. You can miss it because you are allowing fear to direct your path. You can miss it because you don't want to do something that you haven't done before. There's a song called Fear Is Not My Future by There's a couple of versions of it. Todd Galbraith is one. Maverick City Music, I want to say Tasha Cobbs has one. Type in Fear is Not My Future on YouTube. I'll link one in the description box as well. But listen to that song, but also accept and know fear is not your future. Fear does not have to have a hold on you. Fear does not have to keep you bound. Fear does not have to keep you in a place where you remain stagnant or stuck. You do not have to operate in the spirit of fear any longer. I want you to get to a place where you're able to really step out and to not allow fear to control or narrate your story any longer, because there is so much more in store for you. This is not where your story ends. This ain't the end, y'all. Some of us have not even scratched the surface of who it is that we were to create it to be, or the work that we will do while we are here on this earth. And I don't want fear to be the reason why you remain the same. I don't want fear to be the reason why you don't experience the fullness of the relationships that are going to be attached to you. I don't want you to miss out on what God wants to do in this season of your life because you've allowed fear to take root in your heart. Not on my watch, okay? And I'm saying that as I'm saying that to me too, because we have to face our fears, and we have to address our fears and not allow them to just sit and run rampant and keep us in a space where we don't do anything and we just out here living our life as we've been living it comfortably, but still yet in a space that isn't really fulfilling. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me. And so something that me and one of my friends, I told her that like I felt led to do, which is a little challenge, a little homework for you. I want to challenge you to get some pen and paper, put it in your phone notes, type it out on your laptop, your iPad, whatever it might be. I want you to write out things that are truly desires of your heart. Write them down, type them out, write them down. Here's the kicker. I want you to share it with someone. And I know that's scary, right? It feels scary because it's like, you had me until you didn't have me, Angel. I want you to write them down, and I want you to share them with somebody. And I want that to reignite faith on the inside of you. This is not a thing of manifesting, y'all. This is not about, well, I'm going to write this down and God going to give me everything that I want. That is not what this is about. I simply want you to allow yourself the opportunity to acknowledge what your desires are, what it is that you want, without allowing fear to say, you can't write that down. It's not going to happen. You're too old for that. You're too young for that. Don't nobody care. Ain't nobody going to listen. You have to quiet those thoughts. So as you're writing things down, trust me, because I did this and I felt this way as well. As you're writing things down, you're going to have this feeling of that ain't never gonna happen. I shouldn't write that one. No, don't second guess it. If it comes to your mind, write it down. Just write it down and make a list. And I really just want you to surrender that list to God. Surrender that list to God, but I want you to share it with someone else. And just talk about it. This doesn't have to be like anything super deep, but I want you to allow yourself the opportunity to acknowledge these things without allowing fear to come in and tell you you can't do it, you're not about to do it, it's never going to happen for you, or that you allow the fear of disappointment to keep you from believing. Pray and ask God to help you in those areas of unbelief. Ask Him to reignite the areas that you stopped dreaming in, the areas that you have lost motivation in, the areas that you have given up on, the areas that you felt like would never happen for you. Ask Him to restore that joy again. Restore that joy in the journey. And as you're making out your list, if you feel like you're getting stuck, ask yourself this question. What has fear caused me to stop believing in? Write that thing down. I know this will probably make you feel a little anxious. You might be a little afraid to write your list. I want to challenge you to commit to it, okay? All right, that is everything that I have for you all today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you share it with a friend. Make sure that you share your list, and make sure you share this episode with a friend. And until next time, don't forget, be whole, be healed, and be authentic. Have an amazing week.
Thank you so much for tuning into A Change of Heart podcast. I hope you were encouraged, and please take a moment to share with a girlfriend, and don't forget to download the episode. Lastly, I would love to connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram at Angel C. Walston and at A Change of Heart podcast. Have an amazing week, and don't forget, be whole, be healed, and be authentic.